Welcome back to another episode of Building the EMG-6. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the process of building the horizontal stabilizer ribs. At this stage in the construction, the horizontal stabilizer assembly is complete, and the last step in the assembly process is to install the ribs that will form the airfoil profile and will provide an attachment surface for the polyfiber fabric. So we have our inboard tube installed and torqued up with the two bolts on either side of the horizontal stabilizer. We need to mark this tube for 90 degrees to perpendicular. So we're going to need a level. Would you give me that level, the little one there? Yeah, I'm just going to use the bubble level on it. And we're going to level this. Raise up on that tip just a little bit, and you can hold that while I do this. Right, a little more. Right there. So we're level there. Now we can take any stick or anything, hold it at the end, and when it just touches the edge of that tube, you can let it down. And then all we have to do is rub along the side of that tube, and we've now created a mark that is perpendicular to our horizontal stabilizer right now.
You okay, want to now go back out? Or?
I'm just going to make a center line there. Okay. Okay, zoom back out wide. Give me that ratchet. Now we're going to go ahead and just remove the tube from the airframe. So there's just two bolts that hold this in place. And these are 1/4 coarse thread MS bolts that are in here, or NAS bolts, I forget. Go ahead and zoom in on this trailing edge section here. The fitting that's on this inboard tube has a larger radius to fit this 1.5 inch diameter tube than what we have on the leading edge. So now zoom in on the leading edge, and you can see that this is a 1 1/8 inch outside diameter tube right here. And so we should mark this as top forward. Put a little arrow there. That'll just help us orient this as we go to do the rib installation. And now, to remove this, go back to a wide shot there. Just need to put a little pressure on this. Doesn't take very much. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to force this all the way to the inside on this side, and then this will leave just a little bit of room on that side, and I can slide that right on out, and I've now got the rib, or the tube, ready to install the ribs. Okay, so let's go back over to the table. Okay, so we're going to extend that mark along the length of the tube that we had here. So the way we're going to do that is we're just going to use a piece of channel or angle iron, and we'll put that into, we're going to find our mark there. And then as long as we hold our pen in exactly the same position when we do this, we can use this all the way down and get a perfect line that's parallel with that. So now, the next step is we need another line that's exactly the opposite side. Now we can use a straight edge and go right through the center. In fact, let's go over to the vise and we'll just... So you can see that I've projected my line right up to the edge here. And even with a little straight edge, I can project that line right through the center of this and out the other side. And then I can create that mark all the way along the other side. But I'm going to show you even another way to do this. So let's go back over to the bench here. So we're going to take our tube and we're going to want to mark. We've got a nice clean mark on one side of the tube. We want to mark this so that we're on exactly 180 out. Or even if we wanted to make a mark at 90 degrees, we can show you how to do that. But let's start this process. So this is a 1-inch diameter tube, 0.99995. So let's just do the math here, and you can follow along with me as I do this. So we have a round tube. Can you zoom in on the paper here?
I can. Put your hands in the way when you're writing.
Okay, so let's just do this. Tell me when you've got this.
I'm on the page, right?
Okay,
right.
So we've got a 1-inch round tube right here, 1 inch. And so we know that the circumference of a 1-inch round tube is pi d. And so we have 1 times pi, so we know that the circumference of this 1-inch tube is going to be 3.1415. And then if we want to break this up into any number of degrees, we could do that. But if we know that 3.1415 is the entire distance around the outside of that, we can simply divide by 2 to come out with half of that. So we'll just put in pi divided by 2 will give us 1.57. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to take the edge of a piece of paper, doesn't matter, any old piece of paper. We'll make some fairly accurate marks on this. So I'm just going to use a straight edge here. And then we'll go 1.57 with our calipers here. 1.57. And this is probably even more accurate than you need to be for this exercise. I'm just giving you this as a exercise. And we'll take our piece of paper and we'll lay this out at 1.57 right there. And so now I have my mark at 1.57. I'm going to do this to make it really accurate here, so I'm just going to make a real small scribe line right in the center so I can get even more accurate than what we're doing with that magic marker. And I'm going to wrap my paper around this piece of tube. And let's just tuck that right in there, make sure that it is parallel. Okay, so right there you can see that I've got my mark. Now if I transfer this over to the other side, I'm just going to put a very small mark right here. Let's do it in magic marker so that you can see it a little better. Right like that, and right like that. Way more accurate than we need to be, but that's 180 degrees out for that. If you wanted to verify that, switch your tube around and measure it once again. If it's off, it's going to be doubling the air on that side. So once again, we're exactly right on the money. We've double checked our work. We'll bring it back to our little guide that we have, our little piece of angle material here. And set it up so that it will write. And there we have it marked on both sides. So, pretty simple. We now have our reference marks on the side of this. We have our top forward. Let's see how we're going to lay this out. And according to the drawing, which you can go reference 34-01, which is the Inboard Rib Assembly. It looks like we're going to be referencing this direction. We're just going to start with the first hole, the reference hole, which is 1.286 inches from the leading edge. So 1.286. So the feedback we get on building the airplane is that we have dimensions that are so accurate that everyone freaks out about being able to get that kind of accuracy. We only provide that information so that you can be as accurate as you want. Very seldom are you going to be able to make marks, and very seldom is it even necessary to make the accuracy to those kind of dimensions. Most of the drawings have the dimension or the tolerances listed on the drawing, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so we've marked on our top forward the leading edge side of this, and we're going to start one reference hole. So first step here is we're just simply going to take, let's center punch this. Why don't you give me a center punch and a little hammer. Perfect. So I'm just going to do this so that it's easier to drill. And now I'm going to use a number 30 or an 1/8 inch. Number 30 is the appropriate size for solid rivets. First hole. Okay, next we need our two inboard rib sections. So here's our rib material, super lightweight. These things are 0.016 2024 T3 aluminum. You have to remember that the purpose of these is simply to have a surface that we can attach the fabric to and to create the airfoil profile. So there's very little necessity for strength in these things. So we're going to peel these off, and even though Jason is working on the other camera and he's giving us a little bit of a wide angle here, I'm going to give him one to work on while he's being the cameraman at the same time. And so we'll just pull the plastic off there. And the plastic is usually left on these just to provide some protection for storage. You may or may not have to deburr these. Okay, so these come with manufacturing tabs built on them. You can either leave them or you can trim them off and make it radius like the other side is done. So if you want to trim those tabs, you can. If you don't want to, no big deal. A couple of grams difference in total weight. So we're just going to click on. I'm going to try and do this one. Let's see, let me double check here. Yeah, so there's a forward and an aft side to these. And if you need to, you can refer to the drawing. But the easiest way to tell the aft side is the flattest part of the rib is this section that's the longest in here, because there's very little curve on the aft side of the airfoil. There's more notches on the leading edge because it has a greater curve. And so what's happened is, during the design process, we put a tab so that we're never more than 0.02 away from the spline curve that we use to create the airfoil shape. So that's how that is determined. So now we're going to take some Cleco pliers, and we'll start with our reference hole here. And we're going to put Clecos in both of those at this point. And now the next step is pretty simple. We'll just open these both up until, can you see that alignment? Or maybe let's just get a different camera. Okay, so we got a picture of that. So the next step is we can either mark this and move it out of the way, or we can, with this, you can just drill it right on here as long as you're careful. Make sure that they're perfectly aligned. and throw a cleco in every time that you drill a hole. So we're going to skip this hole, and we're now going to the next hole. And we're just simply going to hold it in place, line up. And what is happening is the positioning of this one is being held in place by this cleco, so it's already perfectly aligned at this point. Oh, I gotta get a longer drill bit here. Give me that long jobber number 30. Awesome. So when you're drilling these next to a cleco, just get yourself a longer drill bit. And drill run them through. Go ahead and cleco them as you go though. And now we're going to skip and we're going to go to the next one. Now, we're going to make sure we've got all these on the side that we want. And we can either put them on the outside or the inside. Looks like we're started on the inside here, so I'm just going to continue that. And I'm going to need the 1/8 inch aluminum pop rivets. And the gun. Are these the only 4-2s we have?
There might be some more down here.
Yeah, I'll use these. So we're just going to start throwing rivets in here. And these are aluminum pop rivets. Very little strength required to do this job. If it wiggles a little as you're riveting, just ream it out. It's pretty hard to screw these up. And we'll just pull every other one. Go ahead and pull the rest of the clecos. Okay, that side's done. Now all we've got to do is flip it over and duplicate the process. Okay, we are done. That is the assembly of the inboard rib. Next we'll go over and we'll stick it onto the horizontal stabilizer. Pretty lightweight. Remember once again that the ribs are just to hold the airfoil profile and give something for us to attach the fabric directly to the midspan and the inboard section of the horizontal stabilizer. Needs something rigid during the covering process, and so that's what this will provide for us. So let's go over to the stabilizer and we'll just do the installation at this point. Okay, so horizontal stabilizer is already installed onto the airplane, so we're just going to show you how we do this. We showed how we took this out, so we're just going to stick the leading edge in first, and then the trailing edge will go right in here. Just a little bit of pressure is all that's going to be necessary, and we're going to pop it over the top of that one rivet that's right there, and then slide it down into place. The 1/4 20 bolt that goes in the leading edge. See if I can see that. That looks pretty close. And then before we start tightening it up, we'll make sure we've got both of them started. And this is the one for the rear. They're both started. And we should have about a 1/2 inch of engagement of threads as a minimum. And leading edge. And just snug. Remember, these are round tubes. We don't want to collapse the tube, so they should just be snug. Next, I am going to, this is now permanently installed, so I'm going to take the extension tab on this and once again, all I'm going to need, have Jason hand me the rivet gun here, is an 1/8 inch pop rivet for these. Not doing anything other than holding fabric and transferring the load of the fabric to the individual components. These are anodized aluminum pop rivets, and they're stupid. Just get the regular ones. The anodizing comes off and clogs up everything. It's not worth the hassle. We just thought we'd experiment with them. And we'll do the leading edge as well. And this will finish up the top side of this. You may notice a few burrs off of the pieces that we're putting together. I wouldn't even worry about those at this point. Before we cover this, we Scotch-Brite and wash acetone the whole frame before we put the dope and fabric covering on the thing. So most of those little tiny burrs like that will come off with the Scotch-Brite when we go to do this, so it's not a big deal. Next, we're going to flip the fuselage over, and I'll do the bottom ones. So there you have it. We've finished up on the installation of the horizontal stabilizer rib assemblies. And in the next episode of building the EMG-6, we're going to cover the horizontal stabilizer with the polyfiber glider cloth. And even if you're not a builder of the EMG-6, we hope you enjoy these videos as much as we enjoy bringing them to you. Please remember to like us on our YouTube channel, and until next time, I'm your host, Brian Carpenter, wishing you happy building and flying.